The price tag for this stimulus plan could be up to $850 billion. Let's talk some more about that. Brad Woodhouse is president of Americans United for Change. Sherry Jacobus is a Republican strategist and former RNC spokesperson. Now, we don't know the specifics of this, but here are some of the numbers being tossed around. $100 billion for state governments, $200 billion in middle-class tax cuts, $350 billion for infrastructure and alternative energy. What do you make of that, Brad?
Well, look, Chris, we're facing the biggest economic crisis since the Great Depression. It's going to take a big package to help us get out of this. I mean, if you really do look at these numbers, they are large in some respects, but they pale in comparison to the money that was spent on tax cuts in the early part of the Bush administration, most of which went to the top 1%, went to corporations, went to people on Wall Street. And we know that that economic philosophy didn't work. I mean, just look where we are today. So we have two really things colliding right here. We have an economic crisis, and we have big needs in terms of infrastructure and schools and bridges and roads. So the two really do marry quite well together to help us try to get out of this trouble that we're in.
Sherry, when you look at these kinds of numbers and how this money is apportioned, is this the way to go?
Well, here are some of the problems with how the Obama people are laying this out. First of all, as you said, he wants this on his desk ready to sign on the day that he is inaugurated and sworn into office. That really is something that I think a lot of Republicans, particularly conservatives, are uncomfortable with. Republicans want to have hearings on this. They want to be able to look at what's in this bill, because in a situation like this, there is so much opportunity for all the lard and the pork to be thrown into this. And we're talking about what can potentially be the largest program, the largest spending expenditure by the United States Treasury ever in the history of the world, the largest that the government has done ever. So you have to really sit back and look at what's in this to make sure that we are being prudent with the taxpayers' money, and that's a reasonable request. So the Obama people want this to be some big dog and pony show on the day that he's sworn in, some big PR move, and I think that, again, conservatives are going to fight that. They should fight that. You have a lot of angry conservatives in the grassroots who want fiscal conservatism coming from Washington, and it's a fight they should have.
Look, Chris.
Well, we should say these are many of the same people who were angry with President Bush because of the growth of the deficit. Can you have hearings and still get this done in a timely manner, Sherry? And I'll ask you to be brief.
I think that you can and you have to, but you have to have the hearings. You don't just go write this check and do it in the dark of night because you want a nice photo op and a good party on inauguration night. They have to take the time and give this concession to the Republicans who want hearings.
Chris, most of the committee chairmen on the Democratic side that are coming back in the next Congress, they've been holding hearings this month. I mean, they had a lot of this discussion as we talked about the auto bailout. The Finance Committee has held hearings. So, and people know what the scope of the problem is. Now we need to get down to the business of solving it.
Well, you mentioned the chairman of the Appropriations Committee said this, I'm going to quote, "If I had my druthers and we could find ways to make sure the money gets out the door fast enough to do some good, I think you were dealing with a problem that is well above $1 trillion. I don't think the package will be anywhere in that neighborhood." What about that, Brad?
Well, there are probably needs that are that surpass $1 trillion, but the president-elect and the Congress, congressional leaders have adopted a screen for these items that will mean that many don't get through. It needs to have immediate economic impact, but also they want it to be able to lay the foundation for long-term economic recovery, not just how to stimulate the economy now and be back in this situation in a couple of years from now. And there'll be a lot of projects that don't make that screen, that provide immediate job creation and lay the foundation for long-term economic growth. So I agree, it probably will be under $1 trillion.
But it's just not a realistic expectation that Americans are going to be comfortable yet again with Washington just having a blank check. Washington has shown, both parties have shown, that they can't be responsible with it. They do load these bills up with pork, and the American people just aren't going to stand for it. And I hope that every Republican in Congress insists on having these hearings. I think it's a good fight for them to have politically, and I think it's good for the country, and I hope it happens.
Well,
Sherry, Brad, happy holidays to you. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Thanks, Chris.